Okay, so we've got source A here, and it gives us a little bit of background about source A. It tells us where it comes from. It's an extract from an article written for The Guardian, so that's a broadsheet newspaper, one of those big newspapers that you might see. It's written by a father who's contemplating the long school summer holidays. Now you can tell we're talking about attitudes here and trying to summarise. Remember what question 2 actually asked us to do. Question 2 and 4 basically is what we're using this text for, because question 3 is about the older text. Question 2 reminding you the summary that, so we're looking for the problems associated with these holidays, and also then we're looking for any sort of like wider feelings about the holidays. So we're talking about attitudes. Now attitudes can be obvious, like the word dread here. That's an obvious attitude, but attitudes can also be a bit more hidden, and we're going to need to find some of those attitudes that are implied, that are maybe not said overtly, explicitly and really clearly. They might be a little bit more hidden. So in this reading time that we're still using here, we're going to go through the text and we're going to sort of try and pick out what some of the attitudes actually here are. So we've got the idea that the holidays are dreaded, okay? That there's a feeling of dread, okay? An emotive word, but what's the sort of attitude there, okay? Well, one of the attitudes that's coming out of this is clearly that the father is really thinking about what problems a summer holiday is going to bring with the children's behaviour, and it's actually making him really not want the children to be at home. So that's quite a strong attitude, looking at the problems. You know, the idea of dreading the kids being at home for the holidays, it's not particularly a nice attitude to have. You know, maybe that's not his only attitude, but there is something there, okay? You can see from the picture, I think the idea is that he's a working parent. If he's working from home and he has to take time off work or whatever, it's going to be difficult to do his work. Okay, so let's get going with this text then. Before it appears that I'm some kind of villainous dad, I need to establish that ever since they came into my life, my overriding purpose in life has been to be a diligent, devoted parent to my 2 children. You can see there that they've actually missed some of the text out here. They've skipped a bit. Why? What attitude is there? It's not simply about holidays as such, but it is a sort of a feeling about maybe holidays. So the first thing that the writer tells you is that even though it seems like he might not like his children later on, he's kind of telling you that before you judge me, I love my children, and actually I'm a devoted dad to my 2 kids. So one thing we can really say about one of the attitudes is that he says he's diligent, so you know he really thinks about things deeply. He's devoted, he loves them. So to some degree, get the pen the right way around, to some degree I suppose we could say here that this is a little bit of a disclaimer. It's sort of saying, yes, what follows is a bit of a whinge, a bit of a rant about my children, but just to let you know, I do actually love them. Don't misjudge me. Okay. But, okay, so here we get into some of the problems. But each year when the summer holidays loom, that's an interesting idea, I transform into a twitchy, cranky mess, break out in cold sweats and clawing at my own skin. Okay. So one of the attitudes here is when the summer holidays arrive, forgive the missing the line there, I'm doing this on a bit of an angle. We've got quite a bit of hyperbole there, haven't we? Clawing at your own skin, being in cold sweats. He might have the odd cold sweat, but it suggests that as soon as the holidays arrive, he turns into a type of parent he never wanted to be. So there's an attitude there to some degree that these holidays sort of make him a little bit of a victim, that he feels a little powerless to do anything about it. There we are, powerless. It's as if he is in a situation that's out of control. Okay. As I fret about what's to come once they've been turfed through the school gate for the last time. If you're a working parent of a school-aged child, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've got an attitude here, haven't we? One of the attitudes here is that feeling like this about the summer holidays, about your own children, is quite common. Sort of appealing there, if you're a working parent, appealing to part of the audience, kind of saying, quite a lot of you know how I feel. If you haven't been dreading the onset of the summer break and the impossible work parenting juggle that comes with it, you're a liar. Okay, he calls this kind of work and parenting thing in the summer, he calls it a juggle, suggesting that there's some kind of trick to it, but also that ultimately what's going to happen is you're doomed to fail. You're gonna drop whatever you're juggling. You know, you can't juggle it forever. He then says, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, then actually, you know, you're a liar. It's quite a strong attitude, that, isn't it? That if you love the summer holidays and you think that your kids are wonderful all the time, then maybe you're not being very truthful and maybe you're a little over biased. Okay. On one hand, I'm incredibly lucky that as a freelance writer I get to work from home and I'm usually unimpeded by obstacles such as fixed working hours or a remote workplace, although the thought of that such sanctuary has its appeal. Okay, we're not going to get every attitude here, but I'm just showing you some attitudes that come up. You'll see the attitudes I write about in my answers, but he sort of thinks there that being away from home is a sanctuary. So you've got the idea that kind of he would like to escape, wouldn't he? He kind of feels a bit trapped. Okay. Having said that, I also have to write 30,000 words of a book between now and the end of August, which means it's going to get really, really tense around here. Okay, you get a little bit of an idea of his attitude there, don't you? Really, really tense. You get the idea that he's already feeling a little pressured. He's already feeling some of the stress of this. You can tell that by the language that's used. Really, really tense. Using that intensifier, really, really, just to suggest to you that he's winding himself up already. When the children's mum is occupied with her proper job, there's an attitude there as well, but the attitudes we're really being asked about are about holidays. In fact, I had to get out of bed at 5 AM just to find the time to write this piece, but that's okay. Right, let's move on. We're not short of things to do. We live a couple of miles from the northeast coast and a short car ride away from the majestic Northumberland countryside, so day trips are well catered for. Plus there's the newfound wonders of Pokemon Go, less than a week into that craze, and we're all sporting tans from extended adventures in the sunshine. So one attitude here is that you have to find things for kids to do in the holidays. So I suppose what we're saying is, as a parent, you've got to be, remember this is not necessarily giving your opinion as a school student, this is really a parent's opinion about having 2 kids at home. You've got to be quite creative. You've got to make sure that you keep the expense down in the holidays by doing things that are free. Okay, let's move on. But the book deadline means I can't afford to take a sustained period off work, which leaves us with those days when we're all rattling around the house, getting right on each other's wick. There's an acknowledgement in that attitude, isn't there? That this isn't working for anyone, even the kids. It's not like the parents being wound up and the kids having a great time. It's as though the problems extend to everyone. Yeah, they're extending to everyone, aren't they? As such, a domestic state of emergency kicks into operation. A domestic state of emergency. You can see the hyperbole there, can't you? You can see the exaggeration that's going on. It's not a state of emergency, is it? But it shows how stressed he is. The house as we know it ceases to exist. Okay, we've got more hyperbole there. Any kind of structure or order flies out of the window, with chores abandoned and the ironing pile relocated to a hidden bubble of space behind the settee so we can all pretend it isn't there. Okay. Remember, when you're talking about summarising attitudes, sometimes attitudes don't come out of the language. Sometimes they come out of the tone. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by tone, and you should, but if you're not, by tone, what we mean is like the colour of the words, the kind of the unspoken feelings, the unspoken communication. So here, the tone of it, I think, is a little sarcastic, isn't it? We've got some sarcasm suggesting that when it gets really bad, you've got to abandon the things that need doing to sort of see to your kids, and you've got to pretend that the house isn't a mess, and that you've got to pretend that normal chores, they're not being done. You've got to pretend that they can't get done, and you've got to live with it, and you've got to live in this mess. So he's being a bit sarcastic there, as though like the whole order of the house is being thrown out of the window. Okay. Bits of Lego, random action figures and hundreds of collector cards are strewn all over the floor, with the living room now resembling a toy shop that has been ransacked in a riot. Okay. So you can see there that one of the attitudes about these holidays, about kids being at home, is obviously, very clearly, he's suggesting they make a real mess. But he's also suggesting something else a little bit deeper. Whether or not the children mean it, they're quite, those two words are merged together, haven't they? They're quite disrespectful in a sense in the way that they behave at home. It's probably not the way they behave at school. It's like they're out of routine, aren't they? So they do things they wouldn't normally do. So I'm just going to put there, give my writing, I'm just writing at an angle. Out of routine, okay. Try as I might to get some work done, it's as laborious as pushing a golf ball up a custard mountain with the tip of my nose. Okay, so we've got an idea there just how difficult it is to juggle these things. The kids seem to develop some sort of innate unspoken tag team system. Innate means sort of like, you know, within them. The moment I sit down after finishing a 20-minute football session, I think that says, in the garden, with the boy one, the girl one appears and wants to know if she can have some strawberries or whether I know why the printer has stopped working. Okay, so we've got an attitude here. By referring to his kids as, I mean, he said he loves his kids, so, you know, we're not going to say that he doesn't, because he said that at the start. When he refers to the kids as boy one and girl one, what it sort of suggests to you is he's got some kind of strategy. It's almost like he's got a plan, and he refers to boy one and girl one as though he's got to keep a tab on where they are. And it sort of gives you an idea that it's almost like a military situation. It's almost like a sort of battle that he's got to be really, really keen on getting right. You know you're broken when you find yourself on eBay researching the cost of those paper boiler suits that decorators and lab technicians wear. We'll all look daft, but it'll cut right down on laundry. Once again, we've got some sarcasm there. It'd be easy if everyone just wore a paper suit and they could put it in the bin at the end of the day. There's always the option of farming them out in the nicest possible way, obviously, so you can see the sarcasm there, to someone else, but the cost is too great, be it financially, childcare fees are exorbitant, that means they're very expensive, or emotionally, their grandparents are now shattered husks wrecked from more than a decade of ad hoc babysitting. So what we've got here is the idea of, you know, farming them out. It sort of shows you that having the children at home for the whole summer, it's exhausting, but also there's kind of no end to it, and your strategy and your options very quickly run out because they're your kids. So what it's saying there is, if they get someone to look after them, it'll cost them money. If that's the grandparents again, well, the grandparents have had enough because they've had a decade of all of this nonsense, okay? It's not just the days. The summer holidays blight your evenings too. Okay, blight. A really important attitude there, blighting your evenings. The word blight is sort of a word that's to do with the plague. It's kind of like catching something, kind of disease, something that really makes you suffer. Having something blighted means it's totally ruined and you suffer because of it. Extensions to regular bedtimes mean the younglings, sort of a sarcastic word there, are mooching about the house well after 11 p.m. So once again, well, the attitude here is that in the holidays, what makes it difficult is there's no routine. Thinking of catching up on the last series of Game of Thrones at the end of a hard day's life juggling, better get your finger poised over the remote in case they wander in from their respective leisure spaces to submit some kind of random cheese inquiry, ask if you can evict a spider from the bathroom. We've got, you know, a clear sense of humour there about sort of like the range of tasks and the ridiculousness of what gets asked of you as a parent when the children are out of routine and at home for weeks and weeks. The whole thing is a lot like regular parenting, only filtered through a psychedelic kaleidoscope and played out at 3 times its usual speed. Okay, so we've got the idea there, this sort of like the ridiculousness of the situation, and that it seems a little strange, a very strange situation. In fact, probably the word for it is, it's a bit surreal. It kind of feels as though it's not really happening. You quickly realise how much of the strain of child rearing is carried by the education system, and you vow never to make one of those snide remarks about teachers knocking off at 3:30 each day and spending most of their lives on holiday. Okay, so there's a bit of an acknowledgement there that maybe his kids being at school, you know, maybe their hard work there as well, but he doesn't have to see it. Okay, so we've dealt with text 1 a little bit there with some of the attitudes, so we'll go on to text 2 next.